In late May 1971, in the rural countryside near Fredericksburg, Virginia, a series of events occurred that would inspire speculation of what lies beyond our world. The encounters would be meticulously investigated by the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP, by researchers John Carlson and Bruce Maccabee, who would later describe it as one of the most interesting cases they had ever worked on. The story begins on a dark, cloudy night in May 1971. 3 boys had decided to camp out in a large open field near their rural Virginia community. The field, familiar to the youths, stretched wide under the overcast sky, offering what should have been an ordinary setting for their outdoor adventure. They brought with them a German shepherd named Lucky, who belonged to one of the boys. As the night progressed, 2 of the youths heard the sound of a car horn echoing in the distance. Curious about its source, they decided to investigate, leaving their friend and Lucky behind in the field. This decision would lead to an encounter that none of them could have anticipated. The 3rd boy, now left alone with his dog in the expansive field, began to experience an unsettling sensation. He felt strongly that something was behind him. When he turned to look, he saw nothing in the darkness. The feeling persisted, and moments later he turned again. This time his eyes caught sight of something extraordinary, a glowing object hovering over a pond located within the open field. The luminous craft began to move slowly from its position above the pond, gliding through the air toward the youth. The boy watched as the object approached him and then began to descend, settling toward the ground with deliberate precision. Before the craft completed its landing, the witness observed something remarkable. The object extended what appeared to be legs from its underside, preparing for touchdown. Once the craft had landed, a door opened, lowering straight down in the direction of the watching boy. From this opening emerged what the witness would later describe as a man, though this description hardly captured the true nature of what stood before him. The being was, in the youth's own words, powerfully huge. It possessed notably long arms and had a shiny appearance that caught what little light was available in the darkness. In one hand, the creature carried what the boy described as a glowing box. The entity looked around its surroundings, surveying the field. Then it began moving toward the youth, who by this time had dropped down and was crouching in the tall grass, attempting to conceal himself. Lucky, the German shepherd, reacted to the approaching figure with protective instinct. The dog snarled at the being and began to advance toward it. The creature's response was immediate and peculiar. It turned around in what the witness described as a stiff, bouncing fashion, a movement pattern unlike any normal human gait. The being returned to its craft, apparently deterred by the dog's aggressive stance. The door through which it had emerged closed behind it. For approximately 10 minutes, the craft remained on the ground with its occupant inside. Then, according to the boy, the object just lifted off, rising from the field and departing into the night sky. The entire encounter, from landing to departure, had lasted perhaps 15 to 20 minutes, though to the terrified youth crouching in the grass, it likely felt much longer. The boy's 2 friends found him a few minutes later, still crouched in the grass where he had hidden. He was in an apparent state of shock, struggling to process what he had witnessed. When he managed to tell them about his encounter, all 3 boys quickly abandoned their camping plans and returned to their homes, the night's adventure having taken a turn none of them had expected. The story might have ended there, dismissed as the imagination of a frightened youth, had it not been for what occurred 2 nights later in the same vicinity. This second incident would involve multiple witnesses and lend significant credence to the first encounter. On this second night, 2 sisters of the boy who had witnessed the craft occupant were driving home from an evening class. They were navigating their family's long, winding driveway when they became aware of an unusual humming sound. Looking up, they noticed red lights that appeared to be coming from above their car. What happened next occurred with startling suddenness. The car's engine stalled completely, the headlights went dark, and the car radio fell silent. All electrical systems in the vehicle had ceased functioning. From inside the now darkened car, the girls could see the source of the disturbance, a disc-shaped object glowing white, hovering approximately 50 feet above their tree-lined driveway. For 5 tense minutes, the sisters remained in their disabled vehicle, watching the craft hover above them. Then, as suddenly as the electrical failure had occurred, they found they were able to start the car again. Not wasting a moment, they raced the remaining distance toward their home. As they accelerated up the driveway, the craft followed them, maintaining its position above their vehicle. The sound of a car racing up the driveway at high speed attracted the attention of family members inside the house. 2 brothers rushed outside to investigate the commotion. What they saw confirmed their sister's terrifying experience. A massive saucer-shaped object was following the car up the driveway. They described it as gigantic, far larger than any conventional aircraft that might have been in the area. The 4 siblings watched as the object followed the car all the way to the house. It continued to hover above the vehicle for several more minutes, as if studying the scene below. Then finally it began to drift away, moving off toward the horizon until it disappeared from sight. The investigation into these incidents was undertaken by NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. Investigators John Carlson and Bruce Maccabee took on the case, conducting interviews and gathering data about both sightings. Their work was complicated by a factor that paradoxically made the case more credible in their eyes: the family's strong desire to avoid publicity. Unlike some reported encounters where witnesses seem eager for attention, this family wanted nothing more than to be left alone to process what they had experienced without the scrutiny of the public eye. This reluctance to seek publicity extended to the point where the investigators found it challenging to gather all the information they needed. The family's attitude suggested they had no interest in fabricating a story for fame or profit. They simply wanted to understand what had happened on their property on those 2 nights in May 1971. The investigators noted several significant aspects of the encounters. First, the consistency between the 2 sightings. Both involved a disc-shaped craft with similar characteristics. Second, the multiple witnesses to the second event provided corroboration that something unusual had indeed occurred in the area. Third, the electromagnetic effects on the car during the second sighting. The engine stalling, lights failing, and radio cutting out were consistent with many other reported UFO encounters. The case of the Virginia Giant, as it came to be known, remains one of the more compelling occupant encounters in UFO research. The combination of the occupant's sighting with the subsequent multi-witness encounter 2 nights later creates a pattern that is difficult to dismiss. The witness's description of the being, its imposing size, unusual movement, and the mysterious glowing box it carried adds layers of detail that invite speculation about the nature and purpose of the visit. What was the glowing box the creature carried? Why did it retreat when confronted by the barking dog? What was the purpose of its brief exploration of the Virginia field? These questions remain unanswered, part of the enduring mystery of the Virginia Giant case. The NICAP investigation files on this case remain open. The investigators noted the distinct characteristics that set this case apart: an occupant sighting followed by a multi-witness encounter 2 nights later, electromagnetic effects on a vehicle, and a family that wanted no publicity. Despite careful checking on many points in the accounts, investigators could not resolve what occurred in that field and driveway near Fredericksburg in May 1971. The Virginia Giant, that towering figure with its glowing box and strange bouncing gait, left only questions. What was it? Why did it come? Why did it retreat from a barking dog? The case joins countless others remaining unsolved.